Good morning, boys and girls. Happy Sunday. Last week we had a story that took place in the desert with Abram and Sarai, and God sent them to different places. Even though they were nervous, they trusted the one true God, and it all worked out for them. Today's story is called Exodus, and it is about God's people. Exodus is a word that kind of sounds like the word exit, right? Can you say Exodus? Yeah, and it's also the second book in the Bible. Exodus is when lots of people leave at the same time. Lots of people exit at the same time. Let's see what happens with God's people and see how the one true God takes care of them. Boys and girls, all of our stories that we tell from the Bible take place in the desert. So the desert is a strange and wild place. Remember, it's always changing. The wind is blowing. During the day, it's really hot. And at night, it gets really cold. One day in the desert, the children were very hungry. They were so hungry, they would cry even when they were sleeping. Now the grown-ups knew that they had to fix this and that they had to find a place where the children would have enough food. We've got a lot of grown-ups here. So they talked about it, and even though they were nervous, they knew they had to leave, so they went to Egypt, and the children went with them. So we're going to move everybody to Egypt. Now, when they first got to Egypt, the Egyptian people were very nice to them. They set up homes, and they decided to stay. There was plenty of food. There we go. They were doing okay in Egypt, but then one day a new king came into power. And back then in the Bible days, they called the kings pharaohs. Can you say Pharaoh? Yeah. So the king, this bad Pharaoh came into power, and he trapped God's people, and he decided to make them slaves. So they couldn't make any decisions for themselves. They had to work when he told them to work. They had to sleep when he told them to sleep. They never got to have any fun. They never had enough food. They couldn't get it on their own. The Pharaoh controlled everything. God's people were very sad and very upset. And so they prayed to God and said, God, the one true God, please help us. You know that God heard them, and God sent Moses to help them. Moses went to the Pharaoh. God said, Moses, you tell the Pharaoh, let my people go. And the Pharaoh said, no. So Moses went back to God's people and said, well, I tried, it didn't work. So God made many terrible things happen in Egypt, hoping that maybe the Pharaoh would change his mind. Moses went back to the Pharaoh. Let God's people go. And the Pharaoh just said, no. Moses went back. Finally, God made all of the firstborn Egyptian family members and animals die. But death did not touch God's people. It passed over them. God was looking out for them. Well, this time when Moses went back to the Pharaoh said, yes. So Moses rushed back to the people and said, we need to hurry before the Pharaoh changes his mind. He wasn't that good of a guy, so they couldn't really trust him. So they took unleavened bread, flat bread. They didn't have time for it to rise, and they packed all of their things, and they left Egypt They exited Egypt. It was an exodus. Now, they rushed and rushed, and they knew they had to hurry because Pharaoh's army might come back to get them and take them back. Oops. But then they came to the sea, to the Red Sea, and they couldn't get across. And suddenly they heard Pharaoh's war chariots coming after them. They prayed to the one true God to save them. Guess what? The one true God did save them. He parted that sea so all of God's people could rush through safely. Moses led the way, and the people came. They still heard the war chariots, so they were very nervous. Usually when you're here, we let the children come up and move God's people through the water, but I'll do it for you. And the children came too. As soon as the last friend came through the water, those war chariots were right here. And guess what God did? He closed that water so they couldn't get through. And God's people were safe. They were on their way to a new life. God's true people believed in the one true God. They were so excited. They wanted to thank God for all that he had done to get them out of Egypt. So they were free. They weren't slaves anymore. They were so excited that they sang praises to him, and the prophet Miriam led the dancing. Oh, danced a little too much, huh? Knocking each other over. So boys and girls, next week we're going to find out what happens to God's people. They were slaves in Egypt. They made it through the great water to freedom. But now that they're free, which way do they go? So we're going to find out and see how God continues to lead his people. As with all of our stories, this one is in the Bible. And like I said, the second book of the Bible is actually called Exodus. And it's all about Moses and this story. If you have your children's Bible at home, this would probably be a good story to have your grown-ups read to you, or read it yourself if you know it. It's pretty cool. So this is Exodus 15, verses 1 and 2. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord because he is worthy of great honor. He has thrown the horse and its rider into the sea. The Lord gives me strength and makes me sing. He has saved me. He is my God, and I will praise him. He is the God of my fathers, and I will honor him. Boys and girls, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here next Sunday. Bye.